My humble respect to Guru Mahan, Guru Piran Sivasakaran, Guru Piran Nyo, fellow Nyanis. Today I'm going to continue Mahan's chapter 24 on the vision of God. Here he speaks about, what are the kind of experiences one gets when one, is in the deep tapas stage or doing deep introspection, contemplation, reflection, meditation. We go through many experiences. And oftentimes, and particularly when you're starting off, you get some interesting experiences. It's good to document it down. It's good to create your own diary for yourself. I always keep telling that, tell all the people who are just starting on the journey, have a separate diary, which is your own spiritual journey. And in that, whatever experiences that you get, write it down. You may not have the words for it to describe the words, but that's okay. But then what you do is that when you write down the experiences or the feelings that you get, it could be a mixture of many, many experiences and feelings. Write it down and then slowly do research on what is passed through your mind. And when you think about it deeply, you start seeing that the vocabularies start coming together. It may not be one, but it may be multiple vocabularies that is trying to, or words trying to describe it. And you'll see that's very important. That's actually what research and self-exploration and self-discovery is that why do you experience this? What makes this experience? What does this experience really mean? Does it make the mind expand or does it make the mind constrict? So reflecting on it really helps us to understand our own mind processes and so on. So this is what, and we see that as we slowly understand this and we understand the state of our mind, we understand the greater, divinity, that is manifest in everything, in all the scriptures speak about, and how does it relate to us. And you see that the qualities of this divinity starts revealing itself from us. So, but we need to be able to document it, like any other research or pursuit, of exploration, we need to really scrutinize and understand this. So this is what we did the last time, and I'm going to go a little bit more deeper. So the vision of God or the experiencing the self and God, when we document this, we see the transition. We transition the mind to experience that self and God realization. All the while we've been outside, and now we're trying to transition the mind to something of a much more deeper realm or substratum. And you see that, there are, signals that there are kind of, experiences that we get that gives us nice feeling, blissful feeling, inspirational feeling, very positive. Some of it we can relate, some of it may be very new. And that is why it's really important to document this, because the mind now becomes the field of experimentation and exploration. So a few things that we should do, this is part of the self-discovery, self-reflection, and self-realization, is that when we know what we're experiencing, we know exactly, when we are getting these experiences and we understand this, we can manage it. We can utilize it, we can harness it. But if we don't experience it, we don't really understand what it is, it's hard for us to manage. So, when we get that blissful experience in meditation, it stays for a short while and then it dissipates. So this is why we need to ask, okay, under what condition did I get this experience? Why is it that for a short moment I got it and then I lost it, right? And how is it that I can prolong it? So we really need to understand why, what is this experience? What are the conditions that create this experience? And what are the impact of these experiences, at least for that momentary, at least for the short moment, what were the experiences that we got? And how do we harness it? So this is what we really, this is part of the self-exploration. And when we clearly articulate our experience, we need to be able to put a word to it, because we, the human, species, the way the mind and the brain and the memory is that we need to be able to nail down what we are, experiencing it. We need to be able to have a full meaning of what the experiences is. So, and when we have that, then the mind is able to say, okay, this is what it is, and this is why it is here, and this is how, under what conditions can I manage it, and under what conditions I cannot manage it. How do I then manage this in such a way that it gives me that prolonged, blissful, and it becomes core to everything that I'm doing. So this is a lot of the things that most people don't do when they practice the meditation. They don't have a diary that documents their experiences, right? Today I had this, and Mahan had a very detailed diary. And I also started documenting this, and you'll see that, the kind of transformation that you can actually see in yourself. So when we put a word to it, we can remember it, right? So, and that's how we as a sapiens, or the human species, learn. When we remember it, then it becomes part of our memory, right? So when we remember an experience and we think about it deeply, when we introspect about it deeply, we see that it becomes now part of the memory. So that gets stored in our memory bank. And that's really important, because sometimes people meditate, they get a nice experience, and then they get on with their day-to-day jobs. And after a week or a couple of days or a week, they forget about it, right? So it gets into the short-term memory, but doesn't transition into the long-term memory where it's stored. And when you need it, you can't access it, that experience, right? So we have to remember deeply. That's why introspection, contemplation, reflection really deepens that thought, and it becomes part of our memory. When it's part of our memory, then we can actually access it, particularly the long-term memory, right? So sometimes when we may not want it yet, and we're thinking about something, suddenly that thought comes out. It is able to help us, relate to the current experiences that we're getting. So that transition from that experience to the short-term memory to the longer-term memory is crucial, and that can only happen if we do the ICRM in-depthly, so we can access it. So when we remember that experience, think about it and nurture it, it becomes core to our being. There's a kind of a transformation that takes place in our mind. And you see that the vocabulary becomes part and parcel of the related experiences that we are going to achieve. So it can relate to, okay, this is what I had, this is how I'm going to incorporate that into every facet of my life. And then you see that it becomes core to our thoughts, core to the words that come out from us, and core to our actions. So it's kind of reinforcing and deepening that impact. As we prolong that positive thought and experience in us, something very interesting happens. We see that, we start deepening it. And also, what's really crucial is that we carry with us many, many thoughts. Many of them are negative. Many of them are destructive. Many of them are, makes our mind shrunken. But when through meditation and introspection, contemplation, reflection, as we go deeper, we start getting vision of the divinity in the form of inspirational thoughts, experiences. Some of it is blissful, enlightening, and also a kind of an unconditional joy experience. So when we document that, this is what it is that is happening in my mind, and this is how my mind at that moment is being transformed, we see that we have had that experience, and we know what it is, and it's part of our memory bank. And slowly, slowly, you see that the memory has a store of all these inspirational thoughts, and it knows what it is. It can articulate it. It can express it, in words, in actions, and so on. And slowly, slowly, something very interesting happens. It slowly crowds out all the other negative thoughts, or the thoughts that make our mind constricted. So you see that the expansionary thought, the inspirational thought, the thoughts that are gives you the awesome feeling, slowly, slowly starts reverberating more stronger, because you're deepening it, and slowly, slowly it crowds out, or squeezes out all the other thoughts that make the mind shrunken. And we see that slowly, it replaces, as I mentioned, the negative thoughts, and the DNA of our mind becomes transformed. It transforms into more expansionary, inspirational, and positive. So you see that over time, we experience it. We know what that experience is. We can articulate it. We can then, you know, record that experience in our memory bank. We can retrieve it when we want. And it eventually starts crowding out all the things that make the mind shrunken and constricted. And ultimately, you see that the mind becomes a kind of a, a universal kind of really what slowly you start seeing your own personality changing, becoming more winsome in terms of our personality. You see the tejas, the glow in one's own mind. And you start seeing new words starting to emerge, new experiences you start getting, right? So this is why this introspection, contemplation, reflection, meditation is a set of systematic steps to understand what is happening in the mind, understand this blissful experience, cataloging it, and then putting it in our memory bank, retrieving it when we want, and ultimately it becomes the reverberation in us. This is ultimately the Bhagwan's Gita. So in the last class, I spoke about the 10 important experiences that one starts getting, the sense of quietude, focus, spiritual, right up to you see the life becomes very simple. All the complexity of life slowly starts, transforming to become very simple, to live a very simplistic life. No more this pomp and pageantry and no more this turbulence and uncertainties and so on. So the sense of calmness, the sense of serenity, starts dawning upon us. In that, the next phase of experiences that we get. So this is the first 10 phase of experiences that we get. So what does it happen? So what happens as we go deeper, we start getting more deeper experiences that we can actually start documenting it. And you see that as our mind becomes more silent, a sense of clarity dawns, we realize that what we are seeking is essentially, we discovered it within us. So a new set of experiences that we get that we can actually start cataloging it. We realize that actually life itself is holy, or it's a divine journey, it's sacred, right? It's not something frivolous. It's not something that it's you would take it for granted. Life in itself is part of the divinity. It is a divine journey. So you cherish your life, you know. Though mortal, you realize that within that mortality, you have something immortal. You're carrying something immortal. So you have greater appreciation of your life. You have not only your life, the lens become more and more sacred. It sees everything in this universe, every life as being sacred, and there's a symbiotic relationship between all of them. So it's not just the sacredness of, hey, divinity is in me, but when the divine lens, when the mind becomes that divine lens, it sees everything, every person, every being, the planet, the whole system is actually holy, and there's a divine journey that we are going through. So this is something that, we feel so blissful. You feel as though you feel the divinity in you. You feel your own life is so important and sacred that it's a flame that you are, harnessing, and you see it as a kind of there's a sacredness, and you see that in many of the native languages, many of the native cultures, they see life as actually being very sacred. You cannot abuse it. You cannot, uh, you know, uh, be harsh with life itself. You've got to take it in a very gentle, calm, and graceful way. So the sense of sacredness of your own self, of your own life, the people around you, the friends, and the entire nature starts dawning, and you see that nature opens up its own sacredness to you. The second thing is that something very interesting, the scholar in you starts emerging, because you can start seeing the interrelationship between you and nature, the divinity, and you see that it unlocks that, the knower, because ultimately, the divinity is the knower, right? And it gives human beings the knowing process. And what we are going through now is a systematic way of, documenting, cataloging, and you see that our intellect starts expanding with this enriching experiences. the interrelated experiences, the seamless integration between everything. So there's a sense of scholarship that takes place in us. There's a sense of scholar that emerges that, the knower ultimately realizes what's the known, and the knowing process, right? So you have a clear idea of what to look for, how to look for, when to look for, and what is it that you are looking for. So again, you see that sometimes, hey, I didn't know this. Suddenly I understand it. It makes sense. I can see the relationship between everything that before I did not. Now everything is coming together because there's this seamless integration that gives us that ramps up our understanding and knowledge. So you eventually start discovering, wow, there is an architect of this universe, and the architect is embedded in me and is giving me that window of knowledge of what's happening in me and across, everything outside and within me. So that interconnection that takes place, and this is part of that, meditational sadhana. You get glimpses of that divinity. Something very interesting happens that, slowly, your mind takes a very scientific approach. Scientific approach doesn't mean it's just laboratory. Scientific approach is a systematic way of searching for truth in an unbiased way, in a consistent way, in an efficient way. And slowly, you start seeing that, this is logical and systematic approach to understanding everything. And you do not subscribe to dogmatic belief systems. And this is something that, before you say, okay, somebody said this is what it is, you took it for granted, you never explored. But today, when part of that self-realization process is that, okay, you know, you said this or I've read this, but why is that the case? How is this the case? How is it related to me? And slowly you see that the mind starts searching for the truth, seeking for the truth. And that's glimpses of that self that doesn't take things for granted. It wants to explore. That knower in us starts discovering everything. Leave no stones unturned. So slowly, even all the things that we have learned in a very dogmatic way in all our scriptures, we start exploring. Okay, this is what it said. Why does it say? What's the meaning? What is the enriching and enlightening experience I'm supposed to get from these practices? So the mind takes a very scientific approach to spirituality. As I said, scientifying spirituality and spiritualizing science. When we acquire that scholarly and the scientific mindset, we become more strategic in our thinking process. Strategic means we do not waste time on things that make our mind tired or constricted. Most people, in a day, they spend almost 80 to 90% on thoughts that are frivolous, transitory, and makes them tired. At the end of the day, they don't remember after 2, 3 days. So when we take a very knowing, like a knower, searching for the truth in a systematic way, we see that what's not relevant or transitory, we leave it out, not relevant. So we don't burden our bandwidth in our mind. So only that is deep and rich, we, codify it and we store it so that we can utilize it and, get better value from it. So mind becomes more strategic. And this is very important. And as I started practicing meditation before, I found it hard to do many things. What would take me 7, 8 hours over time, as I progressed and as I valued the journey that I had, as the scholar in me started putting things together, as I took a more logical approach, what would take me 8 hours would probably take me about maybe in the beginning about 80 minutes. And then slowly it became 18 minutes and then 8 minutes. So because it's all interconnected and the bandwidth in our mind is not wasted on other things. So we have much more deeper way of understanding and very fast. So our mind becomes more strategic and we are able to make decisions quickly. We're able to, make the right decisions that help our mind, cope with the challenges, but still, be transcendental to many of the challenges and use these challenges as opportunities for learning. Something very interesting happens when we become more strategic, when we leave out all the things that are not relevant and transitory. We see that there are moments where most of them are enriching, enlightening experiences. We understand there are moments we get quiet moments and we get a spark of illumination and enlightenment. We get glimpses of that enlightenment. It gives you a fantastic feeling, it gives you a kind of wholesome feeling, you know, and you see that that kind of rejuvenates and recalibrates and reboots the brain and the mind to become more and more attuned to this tune by the divinity, right? So again, the spark of enlightenment gives us greater illumination to be attuned to the tune of this universe, the vibration of the universe, the resonation of the universe, the Bhagavan's Gita. So you see that that spark leads to the attunement that gives us that oneness or the constant state of being in the divine vibration. And something very interesting happens is see that when all this happens, when you get that illumination and the integration and seamless, you start seeing yourself part of not just your own biology or your own needs or your family. You start seeing in a much more broader way. You feel empathy, you feel kind of you can feel everyone's feelings, particularly the ones that are last, least, lost, lonely, and also the ones that are finding it hard, and because our vibrations become more interconnected, right? So we see that we want to do something. That's how as we understand people's vibrations, as they become one with us, converge with us, we kind of become more sensitive. We start say, okay, what can I do? And that the sacrificing quality comes in. And we saw this with Mahan, when Mahan was searching for this knowledge of self-realization, he went to many places. He couldn't get the answer. The day his guru showed him, the first thing he says is that, wow, this is a fantastic experience. I want to give this to everybody. But even his guru said to him, just give it to the selected people, not everybody. But Mahan declared that I'll give it to everybody. So he says, I'm searching for something and all my life and I got it and I want to be able to share this. This is the same experience you get. And this is the glimpses of that self. The self is, never discriminatory or biased, or it reveals like a light. When you have in darkness, you have a light, the light rushes out, right? In all directions. In that same way, when the spark of enlightenment when the mind becomes aware of the spark of enlightenment, it's just like a light wants to be able to share that with everybody. And this is what the sacrificing quality that you see, you may not have known this, but slowly over time, you say, oh my God, I need to do something here. I need to be able to help or, contribute in some way, either through knowledge or experiences or whatever, in the way to make things. So the description I can give you is that, in this pitch darkness, you light a small candle and the light just rushes out. In that same way, in that pitch darkness of the quietude of the self, when that spark of enlightenment is realized, you see that it just spreads out, wanting to share that enlightenment to everyone. So this is what we see, the glimpses of that self happening in us. And this is that. So one is having empathy and having that feeling, but actually you start seeing you want to do something. So this is spirituality in action. It's not just feeling, oh, I feel sorry for somebody else. No, you become more proactive. You say, okay, I've got this light. I want to be able to share this light with everybody. Exactly like what Mahan did. He got this enlightenment. It is a very difficult process. The technique is very difficult, but he felt that I have to be able to translate that difficult way of, giving this light in a much more simpler way. So he researched, he sacrificed his time, and he discovered this. And then what he did, action, spirituality in action. So it's actioning that, empathy and altruism. So when we feel something, when we feel sorry or when we feel empathy, true spirituality is actually about understanding that and then actioning it. So it is not just sitting down and meditating and getting a nice feeling, but actually permeating like the light. in every direction. So this is something that happens, in our meditational spiritual journey. The other aspect is that, there are times that, sometimes you doubt yourself, hey, can I do this? Or sometimes you'd have many people say, oh, this is too, idealistic, or you can't do this, you can't do that. So there are a lot of naysayers, but something very interesting happens because you're no more dependent on things outside you. The inspiration comes within oneself, and the mind becomes stealth, like a strong mindset, and the willpower to see through things. You know, when the Guru gives you this knowledge, you see through till the enlightenment of discovering the Guru in you. When a task is given to you, you see through it. When something is given to you, with great sacrifice, you see that the mind becomes strong and the willpower is strong to discover the truth and see through that full journey. You have a stealth of a mindset. This has helped me a lot in my own research work when I stumble across a lot of challenges and things I cannot solve. But sitting down for meditation of 15, 20 minutes and pushing, having the patience, perseverance, persistence, and the practice, and the practice, and the practice, ultimately, the stealth of a problem starts dissolving and the truth is revealed. So this is what many people, I find that, in this journey of practicing meditation for 40 over years, many of them start very, well, very nice, good feeling, and then they fizzle out. There are moments you're going to have things work really well, you feel nice. There are moments that you're going to see challenges, you don't get it. That is when you really, really need to intensify and see the cause through, and when you see the cause through, the truth is revealed. So you have that strong mindset, nothing shakes you. You have the courage, before you may be afraid of things, before you, insecure, all that start dissipating. A stealth of that inspiration from the spirit gives you that, hey, the divinity is within you. What is it to worry about? The divinity is your charioteer of your chariot. What is it that you're worried about? Right? So the mind becomes really strong. When the mind is strong, it has the ability to learn, relearn, unlearn, acquire the resources, and a sense of sufficiency takes place. You become more resourceful and industrious. Yes, there are moments that very challenging circumstances, the strong mindedness and the ability to have the patience, perseverance, persistence, the practice enables you to be sufficient. You have the sufficiency, you become resourceful and industrious to be able to solve any problems that are ahead of you. And the final one is actually over time, you start feeling, hey, the superhuman qualities are things that you can do, many cannot do. You can operate beyond an ordinary person. What will take somebody 6, 8 hours will take you 8 minutes. What would take somebody to really find it very hard to understand the scriptures or Mahan's teachings or other teachings, you'll be able to, boom, you'll be able to get it, no problem. You're able to relate it, whether it's scientific knowledge or religious knowledge from any scriptures or any teachers, you can understand because they're all interconnected. So what happens even in your own jobs, in your professional jobs, in your family life, all of this, you see that, that complexity becomes more and more simple, as I mentioned the last time, right? So you acquire the superhuman qualities and, you operate beyond the field of an ordinary person. So these people are called outliers. There's a beautiful book, there's a nice book called Outliers. If you get a chance, you should read that. What are the things that these people do to become outliers? Right? Mahan was an outlier. All the prophets were outliers. They led the way. Outliers lead the way. Right? So we see that as we start practicing this, the glimpses of the self reveals the superhuman qualities, the leadership qualities, which I'll talk about in the next few stats. So you see that as we intensify and try to understand the experiences that we get, the self in us starts revealing in small doses, in small quantums, these qualities to reveal that, hey, I am all these qualities. So far, I've revealed the 20 qualities. You'll see that over the next few satsangs, you'll see that the self is revealed to you. The vision of the self or God is revealed to you in these inspirational thoughts. And when we capture these thoughts, when we articulate these thoughts, when we know these thoughts, when we register these thoughts, when we catalog these thoughts in our memory, and then when we think about it, when we utilize it slowly, slowly, the mind becomes the self itself. The mind realizes it is that self that is emanating all these qualities. And slowly, slowly, that shrunkenness, the negativity, all that starts dissipating, and your mind becomes like, poof, an awesome universal peace sanctuary. Sandosham.